you, I appreciate that, Commissioner, because when the staff were presenting this information to us, it was clear that they had been directed, that they had to cover the cost of their salaries and all the expenses associated with that. And that just doesn't seem good public policy if that's what we're directing people to do. Just makes me wonder who's left at it.
Nearly 40 million in investments, and is there a breakdown? I mean, what's the amount that is in the planning stages that are in the process as compared to what's been done, however long ago that was done?
I don't immediately have that breakdown, but I will see about getting that for you.
I think that's important because I think, as Commissioner Fish said, I guess my concern is that all these things are happening in isolation of everything else. And I certainly live on a street that gets tore up quite a bit because one government entity is doing X, and then 2 months later, another government entity comes in and does Y, and then 3 months later, another government comes in and does something else. So it's very disruptive to the community that's already pretty disruptive because of the poor infrastructure. So it really would be helpful to know that we're planning in a way that's only disruptive once.
Since we tend to use we have a lot more traffic. So I would love to know when we can expect that those new buses that are energy improved to be riding up and down on 82nd.
Looking for Fairfield.
I live in the neighborhood, and so what I know is that it's the worst street to walk, bike, be on a bus today, and the worst street in the city of Portland. What I also know is you don't have to go far off 82nd in either direction to step in huge potholes and where there are no sidewalks, there are no lighting. I mean, so I don't want us to leave here under any false illusions that all of a sudden we're going to have this wonderful relationship on 82nd Avenue. There has been a lack of investments in that community for a long, long, long time. I want to caution PDOT that as they negotiate with ODOT, that nothing except repairing that street totally with a maintenance plan attached to it will be acceptable to bring back, at least to me, on this commission. It makes me a little nervous that people say we should just take it now, today. No, we as Commissioner Udeli said, we've already got $3 billion in deferred maintenance that the city's responsible for. And so I vote yes as a cautionary tale that I look forward to the real information coming back from these negotiations, and just know I will support nothing less than it being fully repaired before it is turned over with a plan for assisting us with the maintenance and upkeep. I vote aye.
Commissioner Hardesty would like to make a revision. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to rescind my my motion 1 from yesterday and replace it with a new motion 1. Do we need a vote on the rescission, or is that just no?
No.
All you need is a second on your substitute.
If I could ask. Thank you. And so my new motion 1 reads as follows. Motion to increase funding for Portland Parks and Rec and avoid layoffs. Option 1 of 2. Allocate $1,834,097 and one-time general fund resources to Portland Parks and Rec. These funds will support staffing costs to help avoid layoffs of approximately 35 employees in fiscal year 2019-20. The funding source for this increased appropriation is a reduction to the general fund compensation set aside of $1,834,097, which represents a one-year freeze of cost of living adjustments for non-represented employees making $80,000 or more. The effective date of this freeze would be July 1st, 2019 through June 2020. Employees would be eligible for cumulative COLA fiscal year 2019 to 20 and fiscal year 2020 to 21 combined, beginning in fiscal year 2020-21. The city budget office will reduce compensation set-asides by $1,834,097. Non-general fund bureaus should similarly account for reduced costs as a result of freezing COLA for non-represented employees making $80,000 or more. Amended attachments B, C, and E as necessary. You might ask why I have decided to replace my motion 1. As we discussed yesterday, there was some concern about whether or not we would be out of our compliance around equity. And I wanted to be sure that if we were freezing salaries, it would be for the highest paid employees at the city of Portland. Thereby, this revision addresses only employees that are making $80,000 and above. Of this 1,305, 77% of these employees are in a job classified with supervisory or management duties in their job description. Of this 1,305, 49% make more than $100,000 per year. I believe that this is a good stopgap to ensure that 35 employees will not lose their jobs as we figure out together how we make sure that our park system is strong and available and accessible for us all.
Thank you, Commissioner
Could I
Hardesty.
get a second?
Yeah, I think Commissioner Daly seconded.
Oh, I think, did she second? Okay.
Good,
thank
so
you.
we have a motion.
Second.
And we have a firm second from Commissioner Daly, and we will call Commissioner Hardesty's number 1, the new motion number 1.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you, Commissioner. So, Commissioner Hardesty?
Thank you, Mayor. I believe that this may be a good pilot. I understand it was a pilot project that happened last year, but I'm not sure to read that information back yet from the Housing Bureau about how successful that effort was around expungements. But I think that if, since they've had some experience last year and just really focused on that, I think that this is a good amendment that I would support, with the caveat that we get more detailed information before we choose to do this again.
Very good. Any further discussion? Please call the roll, Carla.
Fish.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Udine.
Aye.
Fritz.
I very much appreciate Commissioner Daly's ongoing work to address records expungements, and I'm very happy that this is one of the purposes of the cannabis tax resources this year. Aye.
Winger.
I vote aye. The motion carries. Next item, number 4, motion to amend attachment D, specifically the budget note titled Funding for 311, to adjust the deadline for passage of resolution and to remove the Bureau-specific references. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Fish.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Udine.
Aye.
Fritz.
I'm really excited to see this dedicated funding for 311, and I really honor you, Mayor, for providing this.
Winger.
I vote aye. The amendment passes. Number 5, motion to allocate $85,000 in general fund resources to Portland Parks and Recreation for the maintenance of transit mall planners. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Hardesty.
That's okay. I have a problem with $85,000 for planners when we're talking about laying off people. I mean, I just don't get why we're making an investment in planners. I mean, They look pretty, but I'd much rather use that investment for people rather than for things that look pretty.
Commissioner Fritz.
I don't believe we're buying new planters. This is to pay the people in parks who plant the planters.
Well, unfortunately, and if I could, I'm going to reluctantly support this, but we have a contractual obligation to maintain the planters on the Plus Mall.
Hardesty.
Well, I think this is a fun activity. I am all about employees keeping their jobs, and I must vote no.
Hardesty.
No. I'm very excited about the Office of Civic and Community Life being able to work with those who've been negatively impacted by marijuana law. I think this is a good investment from the marijuana tax that we currently, as the auditor's report showed, a enormous amount of those dollars went primarily to policing, which was not what the public thought they were voting to support. I want to make sure, working in cooperation with Commissioner Jo that we are making every opportunity available for those who've been negatively impacted by poor public policy around marijuana benefit from these dollars. And we have not seen that as of yet, but I do believe there's a plan to make that happen. And because of that, I vote aye.
Commissioner Hardesty.
All right, thank you, Mayor. And this is one of those that gives me great pain because I don't believe that we have set the pricing correctly on this particular issue. When it was presented to us, we were told that the goal was to pay for the service that we are asking, that we're asking the city to provide, to cover all the costs. And for me, I think that's a wrong way to, that's why I think we're in a situation we are with parks, is because we have this mindset that if we can charge people enough for the public service we provide, then we can provide the public service. I think we're doing it backwards. I think that it would be much more appropriate to say what is in the public's interest and then base our rates on that. So I'm just very concerned that, I don't know why this is our policy, and I guess we'll have that conversation at a later time, but I'm just not a happy camper that we are charging people based on what we think we can get out of them, not based on their ability to pay, not based on whether or not the geographic area is low income or not. And I think setting artificially high prices makes city services unavailable for many people. Oh, and I vote no. Sorry.
We are voting yet.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, we're still in discussion.
Oh, yeah.
I think we're in discussion mode.
I would think that would be great for developers, but not for homeowners who may, I would think with homeowners it would be based on their economic status as compared to just a flat fee that everybody pays the same. If I was a developer and had more money to pay.
The new motion, number 1 for Commissioner Hardesty, this is the motion to increase funding for Portland Parks and Recreation to avoid layoffs, option 1 of 2. Any further discussion? Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to have presented some motions to try to give some certainty to who I think are some of the hardest working city employees, which are parks employees. With all our budget hearings, the supermajority of people we heard from were people who talked about how necessary community centers and pools and the opportunity to have exercise programs were. That is a jewel of the city of Portland. And you know, I'm fortunate to work for a city that had a visionary that created our park system. Remember this guy? Remember this guy?
Charles Jordan.
Yeah, not Michael, no,
Yeah.
this is
I think
Charles.
being the community center.
Yes, yes. The reason we have such an excellent process, system today is because in spite of everything, he was a visionary man who believed that everybody in Portland should have access to green space community centers. That the community had a right to be able to go to their neighborhood community center and fully participate. What is grieving me as part of this budget process is that we have at least 35 and maybe more employees that just became permanent city employees with benefits who have the potential to lose their job. We have opportunities to make sure that doesn't happen. And that's why I've given 2 opportunities and proposals to you, my colleagues. Now, as the new kid on the block, this is my very first budget process. And I'm pretty sure that I didn't do it the way other people have done it in the past. But that's the fun part about being the new kid on the block, right? You get the opportunity to do things differently. You get the opportunity to have conversations that we may not have had before. And so this proposal is about protecting our people, not just our employees, but the people in our community who say that without these community centers, they won't have childcare that they can afford. So the seniors who tell us that if they're not staffed, that they won't be able to go to a community center and enjoy their exercise. Charles Jordan took a chance on his city when he had this vision of what a world-class park system would look like. I'm asking you, my colleagues, take a chance. I am putting my effort, my office behind Commissioner Fish, because I know he cares as passionately as I do about the people who are being impacted by this budget. And so I would be greatly appreciative, as would all the hundreds of people I've heard from around this park's budget, if you would support my amendment.
Any further discussion?
Do I have to vote now? How do I know whether it passes or not? You know, I can see the writing on the wall. To say that I would be disappointed if the council votes down this one or the next one. You have another opportunity in just a moment.
But only making that one speech one time.
Okay, well, that's good. You'll need another one. This is the right thing to do. I believe employees and we're not cutting people's pay, because again, people will be getting this COLA next year. It is a delay rather than a pay cut. And you have to think about, who are we talking about being impacted? We're talking about people who were classified for a long time as seasonal employees, who were part-time, who had no benefits, who just recently had the privilege of becoming full-time city employees with benefits. This budget gives us the potential to remove classifications of parks employees. And those really are the employees that are at the bottom of the pay spectrum. I can tell you that me and my staff, we will be okay without a couple of thousand extra bucks this year. I think if you ask people making $80,000 or more, most would say, I'll survive. I can wait till next year for a couple of thousand more, especially if it's going to save other people's jobs. So I vote aye.
I vote no, the motion fails. Hardesty Amendment Number 2. This is a motion to increase funding for Portland Parks and Recreation to avoid layoffs. Option 2. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. Colleagues, you have another opportunity to fully fund parks. This proposal provides for reducing the Portland Police Bureau's budget so that we could fully fund park employees to ensure that there would be no layoffs. Now, this also is part of the proposal that says that the gun violence reduction team, renamed from being named the gang enforcement team, would give us the resources, quite frankly, to fully fund our park system if we would reduce the Portland Police Bureau's budget by $1 million, and then not buy body cams that we cannot afford, nor do we want, nor do they benefit the public at large. Budgets are a moral document, and it is the footprint of where we say we want to go. We can use pretty words, and we can talk about valuing people, and I know that my colleagues all are people who have, over the years, stood up for working people, stood up to ensure that the most vulnerable voices who never make it into this room make it in. I think the conversation we had yesterday around the police budget and this gun violence reduction team was some of the most honest conversations I've ever seen in this building. But they cannot end once a budget is passed. Whether people want to acknowledge it or not, people experience the police in Portland differently based on their socioeconomic status, based on their race, based on what part of town they live in. And so to have a police officer sit in front of me who's been working in the street for 25 years saying, they don't know, people can walk away from their conversations, is not true. Not if you're black, not if you're brown, not if you're a young person, not if you are houseless, not if you are powerless in our community. Mayor, as the police commissioner, I hope that you and I will have much deeper conversations about the need to do things a bit differently. I hope the police bureau will be open, because over my 20 years of advocating for police reform, it is very clear to me that there is no desire for accountability within our police bureau. We are supposed to trust whatever comes out of the police bureau, whatever data they choose to provide to the public. And over and over and over, I know that I have not been told the truth. And it takes audits. It takes bringing a Department of Justice Civil Rights Division to town. It takes independent people outside of Portland Police Bureau to tell us what's really going on. It takes me having conversations with people on the street on a regular basis. Let me just say that I know this is not a conversation at the moment about the police budget, but if we really were voting out values, if this budget really reflected our values, we would not be funding school resource officers. We would not be funding 28 officers to ride around looking for guns. We would not be holding money back to hire more police officers into a system that is dysfunctional. When I've heard my colleagues say, well, there's good and bad, and the gang enforcement unit / gun violence reduction team, there is no good when 59% of the people that look like you are stopped, searched, harassed on a regular basis with no trail to determine why that was so. There are not two sides to this.
there is justice, there is fairness. We have an opportunity by defunding a department that needs a lot of help to fund a department that has risen over and over and over again to serve the people in the city of Portland. I am disappointed that this probably will also go down in flaming defeat. And I am okay with that because, you know, this has been the first open, honest conversation that I believe we participated in on what kind of city we want to have. Being a new kid on the block, let me just say that yes, I know what my bureaus are, but I see that just like me, other people understand that I was not elected to just care about fire and just care about 911 and just care about the Bureau of Emergency Management. I care deeply about those bureaus, and I love the fact that I have the honor of working with those fine men and women. But I don't live in a bubble. I don't live in a silo. And the people who elected me did not elect me to think in a silo. So I want to be clear to my colleagues. I in no way mean any disrespect to any of you. I know how hard we all work. In fact, before I got here, I couldn't figure out why you guys spent so much time in this building. I understand that a lot better now. I mean no disrespect to any of you. I know the caliber of people I'm working with. But I would not be true to myself and my value system if I didn't do everything in my power to make sure that we had a public conversation about whether or not we are investing based on our values or we are investing based on what we've always done. And so, you have my proposal, and I will be happy to see what my colleagues have to say. Thank you. This is my opportunity. I did not know that there were other opportunities to talk about body-worn cameras or the gun reduction, violence reduction team / gang enforcement team. Because we get your budget May 1st, May 14th, we're ready to vote. That is not ample time to have big public policy conversations. Now maybe because I don't know, that these conversations may have happened somewhere else, out of the public eye. I appreciate you, Mayor, saying that you are committed to work sessions around these issues, and these are issues that impact everyone in the city of Portland. I want to be clear, I am not against our police force. Over the last 20-some years, I have met and worked with some wonderful Portland police officers, some excellent Portland police officers. I know Portland police officers who retired without ever pulling their weapons. Those aren't the ones we hire back after they retire, most of the time. What I am opposed to is year in and year out getting reports of who's being stopped and who's being searched, and it just being accepted as fact. Chief Rosie Sizer in 2011 presented the first stop data. And colleagues, I want you to know those numbers have not moved at all since 2011. I wonder how the white community would feel if 59% of them were being stopped annually, and they only represented 6% of the population. I wonder what other community could have such a lopsided enforcement without the city council being outraged. But since 2011, African Americans and Latinos have shared the story of how they encounter law enforcement. and nothing. You may know that I consider myself, quite frankly, the expert on the settlement agreement between the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division and the City of Portland. Because I was on the other side, begging the Department of Justice to come here because there was no justice in the City of Portland for African Americans and others who share my experience of policing in the City of Portland. I am the expert on the Department of Justice Settlement Agreement. I have been at this much longer than I've been in this seat. So I come with that experience, with that worldview, with that community perspective. And I am woefully disappointed that we are not stopping the over-policing of African Americans while we seek to get it right. I vote yes for my amendment.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say I've already spoken to that measure. I want to thank Commissioner Jo for seconding my motions so that we could have the conversation. I think it's important that these conversations happen out in the daylight, in public, and that the public knows that we are making decisions based on whatever information we have that we are participating in the public process. I want to appreciate my colleagues. I appreciate your patience as we've gone through this process. If there is a better process to advocate for the things that I think reflect the values of Portlanders, then please share it with me, and I'd be happy to participate in that. As you know, I was elected citywide, just like the rest of you, and so I get the privilege of representing people citywide on issues that are in my portfolio. And so I thank you, colleagues. I am disappointed. No surprise there. I am absolutely disappointed that we will have employees that will lose their jobs because we think that that's a good result. I hope that Charles Jordan will ultimately be proud of the work that this council does because he put his heart and soul into building us a world-class park system. And I feel for our new director who I can imagine starting day one and being told, by the way, you need to cut $6 million out of your budget. Have a good day. Can't imagine that. But I want to thank you all, and we will get on to the business of passing a budget. Thank you.
Hardesty.
It's not fair to make me cry before I give my response to the budget. But what an eloquent statement, and how wonderful that you have staff that have stepped in and kept your office running like a fine-oil machine. Needless to say that I am disappointed that we were not willing to vote our values today and invest in the people that make the city of Portland great. I've heard from the day I got here, there's no money, there's a deficit, we can't do things, but yet we know where piles of money are located in the police budget. The budget is a moral document. I've talked about how it's funded, speaks to our values, but I also want to add how it's created also speaks to our values. The public and council only scratched the surface in discussions over where our money goes. And quite frankly, I'd like to get a whole lot less reports and spend much more time talking public policy in these chambers. Had we engaged in a robust discussion, I believe we could have done more to make decisions that supported what our community asked of us. Especially as council is just hearing about the $1.6 million going to school resource officers despite students and community members saying they want no part of school resource officers. And the city auditor's report that came out today, talking about the 800K parks, golf courses received to stay afloat. And they continue to have budget deficit and problems as well. But we didn't get a chance to talk about that. Now, I wasn't so naive as to expect my colleagues to just jump on board with my proposal, but I did hope that they would take pieces of it and seriously consider it. I look forward to working with my colleagues to make the budget process an inclusive and participatory as possible for next year. I want to collaborate with everyone to work creatively together on a budget the city can be proud of. And that means bringing the conversation and planning at the front end and not treating it as a footnote once the public gets outraged. I am hopeful because we have made some gains in this budget. I'm excited that we will be funding the Portland Street Response. The mayor has included the Portland Street Response, the census, anti-displacement, health and wellness coordination for fire and rescue. All those asks were incorporated into the budget. And I'm sure there's some people saying, well, why weren't you satisfied? Shouldn't you be happy? You got what you asked for. I am not happy because there are still losers in this budget. And they are fine city employees. I'm not 100% happy because I believe a collaborative process would have given us a better end product. I look forward to moving forward, but before I give my vote, I want to acknowledge the incredible team that I had. Now, you said you got the best team, I'm sorry. You know I love you dearly, however come. I've got the best budget analyst on the planet, Kristen Johnson, who has been extraordinary in helping me understand this very complicated $5.6 billion budget. And I believe her when she says we can do this. We can do the right thing and not lose one employee. I want to thank Matt McNally, who I can never remember the title that he has here at the city, but he's my community organizer and he does a fabulous job. Every time I come into this chamber when it's filled top to bottom and we got overflow rooms, I've done my job right. I want to thank my incredible chief of staff, Collie Edwards, who isn't here at the moment, but she has done fabulous work to help us stay focused on our vision. And last but not least, Derek Bradley, who is a very cool policy dude. Even though he is one of the sharpest dressers at City Hall, he still spends a lot of time doing the work that I hired him to do. I support a lot of things in this budget. However, I am voting no.